Good morning and welcome to 10-Minute Wellbeing Tips for Managers. If you don't already have your cell phone off, consider turning it off or at least putting it on silent. The buzzers, beeps, and bells can be a distraction and a harm to your own well-being. Thank you for joining. Last week, we discussed meetings, and the week before that, our topic was boundaries. Both of those episodes had the theme of valuing our time. And this week is priorities, certainly related to how we value our time. I've heard repeatedly from different people that they don't have time for wellness during the day. It's quite possible that one of the reasons is that we don't make self-care a priority. Today, we're going to discuss or share different ways to think about priorities. I won't have all the answers, but hopefully it'll give you some food for thought. This is the fourth in a series of 5 episodes that will culminate next week when we use a work-life balance worksheet that you might choose to use with your team to create a work-life balance norm. So why is it so difficult? I'm sure that your boss in the institution has told us what the priorities are, and so it may feel like we don't have control over everything. But we do have control over some things and probably a lot of things, like the things that we do minute to minute. There's a lot of information about priorities, but I had to prioritize today what to focus on. So the next 5 slides are really going to be about this idea of focusing. I think this is a flashback from the 70s. We have to be careful about copyright laws, so I think we had to choose from something 50 years old. Anyway, this is an airline stewardess, and she's making an announcement. When we multitask, by definition, we are literally dividing our attention. And the American Psychological Association says that we lose about 40% of our productivity when we multitask. What happens is our brain is engaged in certain functions when we're doing a task, and it uses a certain part of the brain. And when we go and do a different type of task, we have to first shut down one part of the brain and then wake up another part of our brain. And this back and forth costs us time, and it takes some orientation to the new task in order for us to get going. This is particularly important in a clinical space, right? That's one of the main things we do here is take care of patients. There's a study that was done at a teaching hospital, not Johns Hopkins Medicine, looking at how often clinicians in the emergency room and clinicians on the hospital wards engage in multitasking events. And over the course of an hour, the average ER clinician has 9 multitasking events, and the clinician on a hospital ward has 17. The outcome was decreased accuracy. Those clinicians who focused until they completed their task were much more accurate than those clinicians who jumped back and forth between tasks. This obviously has life or death implications, because if a patient mistake is made, it can have dire consequences. Now, it's not just about accuracy that multitasking is not good for. It's also about the time it takes. So another study on adults looked at doing math equations. So a certain type of math, let's say addition, when you do that over and over again, you can get quite good at it and quite quick at it with very few errors. When the researchers asked these adults to first do some addition and then do some other types of math problems and go back and forth, not only were they getting more questions wrong, but it was actually taking them longer than the group of adults who focused on one type of math problem. And when the math problems got more complicated, it just made the accuracy worse and it took longer. Emails are a prime culprit of causing us to multitask and not focusing on our priorities. Now, imagine you go into your kitchen and you want a banana. And when you get there, you see an apple, a pear, and an orange. So you're like, you know what? I want a banana. I'm going to the store. I'm going to get my wallet and my keys, and I'm driving to the store. I find my banana. I check out. I drive home, and I eat my banana. Wonderful. The next day, you go to the kitchen looking for a banana and you're like, all I see is an apple, a pear, and an orange. So you go back. Obviously, this is not efficient. This is not a good use of our time, and it's not a good use of money. We do the same thing every day with our emails. We're in the middle of a meeting and we decide we're going to look at an email, or we're creating a presentation and we look at our email. It takes a long time going back and forth. So we have to really be careful about the impact of emails on our ability to save our time. If you've been with us on these programs before, every time you hear me say, hey, put your phone away or turn it off, and you know why now. It has a lot more problems associated with it. Just then it interferes with our ability to prioritize. And keep in mind, it's not just about how it impacts you, it's how it impacts your colleagues. When we see somebody during a meeting or a presentation on their cell phone, not only does it distract us and make us think about what they're doing, but it also might make us think about what emails or things we could be seeing on our phones. I don't know about you, but when my plate is full and my boss asks me to do one more thing, my response is, okay, if I do that, which of the other items on my list should I make lower on my priority? We can't expect to do everything our bosses ask us to do, just as we can't ask our people who work with us to do everything that we give them. We need to prioritize. We need to develop ways to ask our boss what to do first. And if you're not comfortable with this idea, then tell your boss that I want you to watch this 10-minute well-being tips episode. It's been recorded and saved on the Office of Wellbeing website, and I'll do that for you. And of course, Johns Hopkins Medicine, every year seems like we have more new initiatives and different things that we need to get done. And many of us feel like there are too many projects and too many deliverables. So instead of getting great outcomes on a few things, we get, good outcomes, but not the great that we're hoping for. We are more likely to make a meaningful impact if we can focus on a few, maybe 3 goals instead of many goals. And one of the challenges is that we're often not aligned with the organization's priorities. There's this movement of the message from the top of the organization to all reaches and corners, and Johns Hopkins Medicine is huge. We know that communication can be challenging. And a study in the Harvard Business Review said that 57% of employees complain that their managers don't give them clear directions, and they're not always aware of what's happening in the organization. So that's the Harvard Business Review. What about Hopkins? Well, I looked at our Glint survey results, and communication happens to be one of the lowest scoring topics within our Glint engagement survey tool. So just keep that in mind, that if you're able to convey a message to your team, it's likely to go a lot further than these messages coming through emails from the top of the organization. You have an opportunity to help keep your team connected and engaged in the priorities of the organization. Of course, the priority should be for you to make sure you're taking care of yourself, because if you're unable to take care of yourself, it's going to be difficult for you to support your team, which means that you have to make sure that you learn how to prioritize things for yourself and learn how to say no. Listen, there's more resources on this, but I couldn't cover everything today. There's a chapter in Stephen Covey's bestseller book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of those habits is putting first things first. So if you want to get more information on this, you can turn to that chapter in that book. Wow, time flies quickly. I am running late here. So here are your tips. Listen, if you're given a task, don't reflexively just do it. When the phone rings, it doesn't mean that you have to answer it. Take a breath, think about what's in front of you, think about whether or not what you think is urgent or an emergency really is an emergency, so that you can stay focused. If you don't want to be interrupted by the ring, turn the phone off. please do the answer the 2 questions that Tara has in the thing. Yeah, I already told you what's next week. I got to remind you about our resources, and I know we're over 10 minutes, but last week I promised you that we would return to something I brought up last week. I wore some yellow socks that don't quite match my outfit, but the thing is, I don't really have crazy socks. This is the best I could do. I want to thank the Department of Psychiatry for extending me these socks that have an acronym ADAP. It's one of their programs. That's all we have for our 10 minutes today, folks. Let's end the show here.